50 years. I hope my story will prevent you from making some of the same painful and foolish mistakes I have made along my journey toward optimal health. It is my experience that it is far easier and less painful to learn from others' mistakes. My commitment to a fitness routine started in 1968. Dr. Ken Cooper's book, Aerobics, catalyzed my interest in health, which eventually led me to enter medical school 10 years later. Sadly, like most health enthusiasts during the late 60s and early 70s, I fell in line with the low-fat, high-carb diet that has been popularized by the mass media for decades. This type of diet is the polar opposite of what I now understand as necessary to prevent chronic disease, manage cancer, and optimize health. 7 years of medical school and family practice residency solidified my brainwashing into the conventional, drug-based medical model that exists primarily to treat the symptoms of disease. Virtually none of my 7 years of training ever addressed the root cause of common chronic illness. Rather, it focused on managing symptoms through the use of pharmaceutical products and medical procedures. In 1995, my understanding made a radical leap in evolution. I met Dr. Ron Rosedale in a room with a few dozen other physicians at a meeting of the Great Lakes Academy of Medicine. Little did I realize then how fortunate I was to be one of the first physicians inspired by Dr. Rosedale's wisdom on clinical metabolic biochemistry. Dr. Rosedale lectured for over 3 hours on the critical need to control high insulin levels in order to prevent nearly every chronic degenerative disease that is rampant in our modern culture, including diabetes, obesity, heart disease, cancer, arthritis, and neurodegenerative diseases. You may have had a similar epiphany in your life when you knew you were encountering a foundational truth. In this case, I knew it could impact the health of hundreds of millions of people who desperately needed help. For the next 10 years, I used the principles Dr. Rosedale taught me, along with other information I had gained from attending many dozens of postgraduate courses on nutrition, a subject, suffice to say, never taught in medical school, to continually redefine my understanding and use of food as medicine. Even today, most medical schools fail to provide even the most rudimentary basics of nutrition. I was fortunate to have the privilege of using these principles to care for more than 25,000 patients in my clinical career. It was enormously rewarding to be able to provide solutions for most of my patients, many of whom had been seen but not successfully treated by some of the leading physicians at some of the finest institutions in the country. It wasn't that I was any smarter than these other physicians. Far from it. The difference was that I stayed disciplined, open-minded, and diligent in pursuing the truth about the underpinnings of health. My unfair advantage was elemental. I had a better understanding of how the body healed itself because I made a decision to stay at arm's length from pharmaceutical interests. That perspective helped me focus on looking for and remedying the cause of disease rather than mitigating the symptoms. Although I was aware of the importance of limiting refined carbs and processed foods and replacing them with healthier choices, I was relatively clueless about the importance of eating plenty of high-quality fats and activating the body's natural ability to burn fat for its primary fuel instead of glucose. I didn't realize that I still had to look further. We're losing the war on cancer because we've been fighting the wrong enemy. 20 years after I learned of the importance of insulin, I read Travis Christofferson's Tripping Over the Truth, How the Metabolic Theory of Cancer is Overturning One of Medicine's Most Entrenched Paradigms. I was struck by an epiphany similar to when I first heard Dr. Rosedale's lecture. Here was something that had the potential to radically improve the health of millions. The argument Christofferson so eloquently laid out, and that builds on what Dr. Rosedale taught me in 1995, is that cancer and nearly all other chronic diseases are caused by defective metabolic processes in your mitochondria. This is typically a result of insulin and leptin receptor resistance from too many net carbs and activation of the mTOR metabolic signaling pathway by excessive protein. We will go into great detail on these topics later on, but for now it's enough to know that this is the root of the problem for most. This is in direct opposition to the conventional views of the roots of disease. For over a century, the widely accepted scientific dogma has been that cancer is a genetic disease that develops as a result of chromosomal damage in the nucleus of the cell. The discovery of the structure of DNA by Watson and